Welcome to the Hard Skills Show with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and today's guest, Tammy Gooler Loeb. And we'll be talking with her on how to stay on track in your career growth in the face of obstacles and uncertainties, which I think is just so needed as a topic right now. People are, I don't know, our careers are completely being upended like crazy. There's so many more options these days than ever before. And yet we feel like we're sort of constantly afloat, not having a path. And so Tammy is here to help us think about that in very strategic ways, because we are in our season 3 of our strategic leadership pathway model that we talk about on the hard skills. And that is mapping a strategy, right? So she's going to really help us with that. Great to have you on, Tammy.
Thank you, Mira. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Yeah, me too. So as a reminder on the show, we discuss how to develop the nuanced hard skills. They're not soft, people. Hard skills needed to drive significant systemic change to make a real impact through your leadership. Be ready, take notes. I always do. Reflect deeply and identify at least one small step to further develop your hard skills muscle based on what Tammy shares with us. So a little bit about our guest today. Tammy is the author of Work from the Inside Out, Break Through 9 Common Obstacles and Design a Career That Fulfills You. She's a career and executive leadership coach, a speaker, a facilitator with expertise in career transitions, workplace communication, and leadership development, with over 20 years in business across a wide array of sectors and industries. She is also the host of the Work from the Inside Out podcast, same name as her book. Nice, right? And on that podcast, she showcases the fascinating journeys of people who developed meaningful and satisfying careers. So really go listen and hear about inspiring stories to get inspiration for yourself as well. She has appeared in Forbes, Fast Company, the Boston Globe, Harvard Business Review Ascend, US News and World Report, and Newsweek. Tammy also has an MBA from Boston University and is a certified professional coactive coach. That's a lot of experience, folks. So, Tammy, fun icebreaker question. When was the first time that you felt a magical alignment between your career and your interests or energy or personality?
I would say my first job out of college. I went
Really?
to, yeah, I
Yeah.
I had a job in community mental health out of college. I was fascinated by the mental health field at the time and really was intrigued by the clients I was working in the community with adults who had, many of whom had been institutionalized the better part of their adult lives. And we were working to help them assimilate into the community. And I just was fascinated by how resilient some of these folks were and how they were really trying to build lives for themselves in the community after having lived in, very restrictive environments for some of them for decades. And it was tough work. I did it for just a few years, but there were moments where it just was, I could tell it was just like, this is exactly where I want to be.
And what made it feel so right for you?
I think because for the same reason actually that I feel so right about being a coach now. And that is that when I could really reach somebody and I could tell they felt heard and seen, and that really contributed to them being able to take the next steps in their lives and feel more, really feel more ownership, more empowered to take the next steps, maybe even take some risks. and do things in their lives they hadn't done before or hadn't done in a long time.
Mm.
So that was a big piece of it, was to help them boost their confidence.
Yeah. And I'm hearing that some of it is alignment with your own interests and what excites you, but there's also what you find meaning
Mm-hmm.
in how you find meaning in your own work and how you feel like you made a contribution. And in that situation, it was all about feeling like you were helping people feel heard and seen. And that
Mm-hmm.
was, a deep sense of meaning, I would guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And because I had the chance to develop some one-on-one relationships with the folks I was working with there, I think that was, for some of them, that was kind of a big deal, because they had been, I mean, for lack of a better way to depict it, they were somewhat warehoused for a long time. And it's not that they were treated horribly in the hospital that they were in, but it was a very, regimented kind of routine life. And for some of them it was a big, enormous adjustment to live in the community, um, and to get to know themselves in that way. And so I was really delighted to be a part of that and to help them find their way.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
And so then I'm sure people will wonder, how did you get from that career, which you did find meaning,
mhm.
right? And you were connected. How did you then sort of move from that place to what you do now?
Yeah.
And did you apply some of your own sort of strategies around thinking about your career, or like how did you even come to this interest area where you are right now?
Yeah. So, um, going backwards for just a moment, when I was an undergrad, one of my on-campus jobs was in the career center at school.
Oh,
Unlike some people who, probably, would work in the school dining commons or the dish room or something for their work study, my work study jobs were, I did actually work in the dish room a little, but um, but my work study jobs, I was very strategic about where I worked. I worked in the admissions office, and I worked in the Career Resource Center. And I had a chance to talk to people. Both, I got to do, by my second year there, I was doing prospective student interviews and meeting with families. And then in the Career Center, I was talking to students about what their plans were for going forward, whether they were trying to find internships or thinking about grad school. And I loved just helping people think about what their next steps were and what was going to be a good fit for them. And so a friend of mine actually said to me when I became a coach, she said, "Oh, this is perfect for you because you just love to tell people what to do with their lives." But it's not that I want to tell anyone what to do with their lives. I want them to find their own way. But I love hearing what makes people tick, what makes them happy and fulfilled and satisfied, and then helping them think through, well, what are some ways to get there, and also pay the bills and do all the other things that, have to happen. So that was in my blood already. And when, after a few years working in community mental health, I started looking at things bigger picture, more systemically, and I saw that things were very poorly funded, that some of these folks were really going to struggle living in the community, and that the supports really weren't there for them. And it really started to take a toll on me. And I started to think that I needed to do something at a different level. So I thought, well, I'm going to go into public policy. I have to figure out who's making these decisions, who's deciding what happens with these people's lives, because they were totally dependent on public funds to support them. They were all living on some kind of disability benefits. A couple of the folks we worked with actually were able to get jobs and start to support themselves. But most of them had been institutionalized for such a long time. It was, and some of them were elderly. So they were, they weren't at a point where they were going to start developing a career. So, and some of our folks were quite mentally ill and weren't going to be able to function in that way. So I said, I need to. I was living in the western part of Massachusetts in a smaller town. I thought, I think I need to go to the state capital and get a job where I can start to understand who's making these decisions, how do they get made, how do policies get made, and all of that. So I moved to Boston, and the rest, as they say, is history, because I never left. And I did get a job working actually in the mayor's office in Boston, and did work on all kinds of human services, homelessness, poverty, public health policies, and all kinds of things. And it was quite the education.
I bet. That's so interesting. So, how did you then make the leap from policy to coaching, career coaching?
So I actually, there was a little bit of a detour from there. Part of the work that I did when I was in the mayor's office was, I also did I worked with a lot of other people. We wrote some very, very large grants to bring in federal dollars into the city, mostly to build up services for the homeless populations. We got a lot of money at that time. Boston was really, they were really shining a light on Boston across the country. And so it was really interesting, but I learned how to do a lot of grant writing. So I did sort of take a little bit of a detour into fundraising for a while. I also got my MBA at that time. And so that was sort of a precursor to going into coaching. And I went into coaching, I think, because after doing fundraising for a while, I realized I really need to get back into working directly with people. I was really missing that, and fundraising was really not my thing. But,
Yeah.
I found that out.
Yeah. Well, I think this is helpful for people to hear, because a lot of people think that if I was strategic and intentional, my career would be lockstep. One thing would lead to the next, will lead to the next, and it's all very clear.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not true.
Nope.
The reality is that most careers are like Tammy's, they zigzag.
Yeah.
All over the place. It does not mean you're not being strategic and intentional and thoughtful.
Right.
Sometimes it does, but it doesn't necessarily always mean that. Sometimes you are, really focused on what makes the most logical next step for me based on what I've learned so far. And it does lead you in directions that somehow are interesting, sometimes how the sort of circle closes over your career, right? So let's, once we're reaching an ad break, when we come back, let's explore that a little bit more about the zigzaggy versus direct nature of career, decision-making after the ad break. You're listening to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and our guest, Tammy Gooler Loeb. We air on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. If you'd like to join our online audience right now, live, and ask questions that we can answer in real time, you can find us on LinkedIn or YouTube at talkradio.nyc. You can also find us on Facebook, and we'll be right back with our guest in just a moment.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills. on talkradio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to the hard skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Welcome back to the Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Broncu, and our guest, Tammy Gooler Loeb. And where we left off before the ad break is around careers sometimes feeling zigzaggy more often than not, but you can still make them strategic and thoughtful. So I'm wondering from your perspective, Tammy, what are the kinds of things that can either cause us to derail, so the zigzag is totally off and not going in the right direction? It's not a good sign. And when do we know that the zigzaggy stuff is actually not a problem because we are going in the right direction? It is thoughtful, it's strategic. How do we know?
I love the way you asked that question. And it helps me to give you a very straightforward answer. I think the word values comes to mind. I think that when we are clear about what our core values are, and I know that that's a term that a lot of us coaches throw around a lot, but what I mean by that is, and I can even use my own story as an example. So I had a core value around being of service, helping people. That never stopped, no matter what I was doing. Even though it looked like I zigzagged, there was a common thread that went through everything I did in my career. So I never felt like I was zigzagging. I felt that I was on track, but where the situations that I got into in different roles, there were elements of those roles that really did deviate from my values. So for example, and this is where it happens with a lot of people, sometimes it can get very confusing. So you can be in a job, or maybe it's something you studied for years, and you start to question, did I make the right choice? Am I on the right path? It could be that you made the right choice, but perhaps you're in an organization where the leadership culture or the general working culture is not a good fit with you because it doesn't match up well with your general working style. And I say your values because there are things like the ways in which, let's say, you like to work, or the ways you like to collaborate or have some autonomy, or how many people leave a job not because they didn't like the work, but because they really didn't like working under a particular boss, or there were decisions being made above them that they didn't have a voice in. And they have a strong value for being able to have a role and share their voice. So that's what I mean by values is, especially when you reach a certain point in your career, most people, if they've risen up through to a certain level, they want to feel that they have something to say, that they will be heard. And there are lots of cases where I've seen where that doesn't happen, and people are going to want to make a move away from that and be in a situation where they can really contribute in a way that really suits them far better, and where they can really make a contribution. So it may be that they made a good choice in terms of a path, but the actual organization or the people they're working with is not a good fit. And there's tons of evidence that shows that that's true, that most people who leave a job don't leave the job, they're leaving the culture or the boss. And I can say that was true for me in some cases. While I got a ton of amazing experience in the 4 years that I was in the mayor's office in Boston, and I made, amazing relationships and connections, and the experience was incredible. It was also a very, very cutthroat political environment because we were in the middle of elections all the time. And there was a lot of pressure to get involved in elections, and there was a lot of heavy duty power dynamics. And I hated that. I didn't mind elections, but I minded the power dynamics. And there were individuals who really played those up, and then there were others who didn't. And so after 4 years of that kind of dynamic, I said, I think I'm done here. And that's really that did not match with my values after a while.
Yeah. And
So
I appreciate that we want to sort of separate out values from context, right? So
yeah,
when the context does not allow you to play out fully your values,
yeah,
it might not be that you're on the wrong path. It
right.
might be the context. I remember early in my
Exactly.
career, I was a school counselor at the elementary school level, and I felt like something was off. And
Mm-hmm.
I decided to just like up and leave the entire profession. I was like, let me just try a different context. Let me try
Yeah.
high school. Maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
the age, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
sort of explored a couple of different avenues, changing the age, changing the type of school,
Mm-hmm.
a location. There's a lot you can change to figure out,
Yes.
is this not values aligned? Is it context? What is this? Right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. It's an excellent point. And, especially when you've prepared, so thoroughly for a particular type of work, and your heart's in it in so many ways, your heart and your intellect, right? And so, yeah, you want to really give yourself some time to kind of really unpack it and figure out what are the things about this that are just not, it's not feeling right. Sometimes it's hard when you're in the middle of it to put your fingers on it. And sometimes it does feel right for a period of time, and then something changes. That we hear about that kind of thing all the time, right? Like there's a change in leadership or there's a change in something else. So
Yeah.
yes, absolutely.
And what's coming up also for me is um, I remember in my PhD program, somebody had put in all of their heart and soul and, like was in the PhD program for quite a while. And sort of at the very tail end, she said, you know what? I've been thinking about this for a really long time. This is not the right path for me. And she dropped out of the PhD program.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's what comes up for me when I think about that. For me, I really admired the sort of incredible self-awareness that she had to make what is nearly an impossible decision for most people to make,
Mm-hmm.
because you you know are so focused on achieving the original goal that you set out for yourself at the expense of even like questioning whether this is still the right path 4 years later, right?
Yeah.
And most people judge that. Most of us will judge that decision or will give a global negative attribute.
Right.
Oh, she couldn't cut it or whatever it is.
Right.
Or um, we have a society of we don't quit, right? But sometimes it's not a, a label that is appropriate for that kind of decision.
Right.
You're not quitting when you're realizing it's the wrong path. So I'm
Right.
curious, like your sort of reaction or thoughts to that.
Yeah, no, I love that story because it could have gone either way. It could have gone that she just decided to stop and figure out what she wanted. And I've heard other stories like this too. And then there are people who said, look, I've come this far. I might as well finish it out. I I I feel that I owe that to myself to finish this and get the degree, but I know that I'm not going to pursue work in this area, but I'll be proud that I finished. So there's a value there, again,
Yeah.
with finishing something you started. And if it's that important to you to do that, by all means, go right ahead. Either way, there's no wrong decision.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of courage because I think we are in a culture that says you start something, you got to finish it no matter what. And, I'm thinking, well, who wrote that rule? If you're unhappy or you're feeling that it's not working for you, why put more energy into something when you know you really want to either figure out what else you want to do, or maybe you already know what direction you want to go in. The other piece I want to say about that is, I think when other people judge, they're judging it through their own experience, their own perspective of, well, now they're going to have to start all over again, kind of thing. And it's like, that is not true at all, because they've just spent years studying and working in something and developing skills they get to take with them, and they can use them in a lot of different contexts. So I wouldn't assume that whatever they've done is a waste. And I think it's unfair to make that assumption. They reached this point to make a very courageous decision. And to me, that's part of what they gained out of doing all of this.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. So then to sort of loop it back to something you said earlier, like recognizing what makes me feel satisfied, what makes people feel satisfied, and what, my values are.
Right.
I would guess, and we're going to talk about this after the break.
Yeah.
I would guess that one potential thing, maybe very common, that could derail or keep people from taking the thoughtful career path that they can take is incorporating too much of other people's values or what other people think you should do to feel satisfied, and believing that is right for you.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's the outside in approach.
Oh, I can't wait to get to the inside out approach. Okay. Right. So we are reaching the ad break. You're listening to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and our guest, Tammy Gooler Loeb. When we come back, we will talk about really trying to redesign our careers from the inside out, not from the outside in. And if you'd like to join our online audience and ask any questions that we can answer in real time, find us on LinkedIn, YouTube, or Facebook at talkradio.nyc, and we'll be right back with our guest in just a moment.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Were you an essential worker during the pandemic? If you needed to learn stages of epilepsy, did you depend on advocates? Did you use new innovations to cope with mental and neurological issues? Maintaining high quality of life and keeping good mental health are what we all strive for. I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each week top healthcare influencers, professionals, and innovators answer these questions and more. Stay tuned on Thursdays at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will continue to be frank about health with all of you.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to the Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and our guest today, Tammy Gooler Loeb. And Tammy is the author of Work from the Inside Out, the book, as well as the host of the same name. And we just got done before the ad break talking about how our careers can derail if we are working from the outside in. So what do you mean, Tammy, when you say work from the inside out to design your career? Oh.
What I mean by inside out is when people follow that inside voice, the voices that often will tell us, you know, you might want to consider looking at things this way or going in this direction. And that's the voice that very often, or maybe not too, I don't know how often, but we often tend to brush those things aside. Almost, it's almost an automatic thing. We all do it to some degree. And then we find ourselves a little further down the road and we have some kind of result or outcome of something. And we say, I should have listened to that first instinct that I was saying this to myself and I didn't listen. And I was right. I was right. And we now have research that has shown us that our instincts are often spot on. And they usually do take us in a direction that really does work well for us. Now, you know, nothing's all or nothing. I don't believe in, you know, in anything that way. But most of us were raised by well-intentioned adults. We had other influential people in our lives, teachers or grandparents, other people who tried to give us guidance and ideas about how we might go through life. And those people really, you know, gave us some guidelines, and some of us took those to heart and thought, well, that's the way I'm supposed to live life. This is what makes for a good life. And some people really had that so ingrained in them that when they got to those decision points for themselves, they didn't think that any other thoughts or alternative thoughts were valid. And so they followed whatever they were told to do. You know, oh, you're really good in science, you should become a doctor, or you're really good in math, you should become an accountant. And some of those people did. And some of them have knocked on my door in their late 30s and into their 40s, and they've practically fallen apart in a puddle of tears in front of me to say, I'm miserable. I really don't want to do what I'm doing. So that's the outside in. Now that's an extreme, but I've seen more of it than you know, because that's why some people will come to me. But I think that it's hard to shake those lessons learned from all those years. And so it becomes difficult to discern that. So we really have to practice this inside out approach. But when we do, and we listen to it, like the example that you gave before the break, this person who, you know, had gotten through many years of a doctoral program and then decided to step away, you know, that was a very intentional inside out approach. And yes, there will be people who might judge, but who cares? They're, you know, other people's thoughts are just their thoughts. They have nothing to do with how we're going to live our lives. But then again, when you've got people who are close to you who are telling you, you know, no, that's not the right thing, it's hard to deal with that sometimes.
It is, especially people you care about who care about you, and they're giving you their opinion because they worry about you, because they care about you. But you're right that their opinion is coming through their lens.
Right.
And we must appreciate that. Like, thank you very much for caring. That's your lens. You know, you don't have to worry about me. You know, there is the hard skill in this is being able to separate yourself from the messages or the worry about judgment or the worry about disappointing other people, so that you can seek out what feels best for you. That is not an easy skill. That
No,
is not easy to do for most of us.
no,
Right. So
it's not.
yeah.
Mm-mm.
So tell us, like, what is your framework
Yeah,
in your book
yeah.
that you recommend that people sort of apply in order to like start thinking through this?
Well, there's a few things, you know, and so one of the frameworks, it's not really a framework. My book is loaded with stories, 22 stories of people who each in their own way worked through some of the typical obstacles that people will allow to get in the way of them making decisions around those inside out kinds of careers. So, for example, in each chapter in the book, looks at a particular obstacle. Chapter 1 looks just at fear in general, because most of the obstacles are fear-based. And those fear messages really do come from whatever we were taught, you know, or more societal-based messages. So for example, the second chapter is called It's Never Too Late. And then I highlight 3 stories of people who all made significant career pivots at age 40 or older. And so,
And can I
and
stop there
yeah,
just to like
yeah.
put a real fine point on what you're saying here? Um, when we hear stories of people who are like us, right? So if I'm in my 40s and I don't see anybody around me that has done this thing, that feeds into my fear that it can't be done. But if I can read or hear about from other people who are like me, stories of success, it gives me a visual, an inspiration, like it can be done. And here's how a couple of people did it. It's the same as like doing informational interviews, right? Here they are in a book. So just wanted to sort of like point that out.
Yeah. And then at the end of each chapter, there are reflective questions that help people to kind of take a look inside themselves a little bit to look at, well, how ready are you for something like this? What kinds of thoughts are you having? So it gives people just a little bit of safe space to just to start thinking about these things. No one's telling you to change anything overnight. And in fact, most of the people profiled in the book did not make any changes overnight. And I think that's the other thing that scares people is they think if they were to go after what they really wanted, they think it's sort of like all or nothing. They have to go from where they are today to the alternative, and it's like a flip. And that's not how most of these people made the changes that they did. And that's why I told the stories as well, is to show how they went through these transitions in incremental ways. My whole podcast is full of almost 250 stories now of people who've made a variety of transitions. And so, you know, I really do try to make it relatable to people in that way, to say, here's what's possible. This isn't pie in the sky. I'm not suggesting that anybody go and follow their passions or go after their dreams. I'm not one of those coaches. I really think that there's a way to sort of honor that inside voice that's telling you you want something else that's going to be more meaningful for you. But it doesn't have to be the ultimate, you know, rainbow and unicorn kind of scenario. It could be something that is just satisfying, because we know, if we look, there's the Gallup polls that come out about employee engagement year after year after year across cultures, across age groups, across industries. We see 60 to 65% of the working people they poll, and they're polling hundreds of thousands of people, are saying they feel disengaged at work. And I don't know about you, but that makes me really sad.
Yeah, yeah. And on Facebook, we have Malena Korzinska, who said that was very well said. So thank you, Tammy. It was very well said. I mean, do you feel like some of the hesitation and then some of the pushing for, like, you either quit or you stay, like this black and white, is more about our fear of the messy middle?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I went through that too. And, I'm one of my jobs I was in, and within 6 months, I knew that it was not a great fit with the boss I had. And I stayed another 2.5 years. And I was probably kicking myself the whole time, saying, you really should get out of here. And I knew it, and I knew I'd stay too long. And it ended up being kind of a traumatic situation for me. Even though the work was meaningful, the work situation really got under my skin. And so, it wasn't probably worth staying. But we do tend, we get committed to things. We feel responsible, right? And I think the same thing happens with people once they've gotten established. If they've started a family, they've got other people depending on them, they start to feel stuck with all the other responsibilities and commitments that they've made. And they assume that there's no way they're going to be able to make a change. And I have stories in my book of people who had young families and did find a way to make the changes they wanted to make. It's not easy, but it can be done.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're nearing an ad break. When we come back, let's get into your CEO framework. Why did you choose it? How did you choose the CEO framework? What is it? How can people apply it? And then the first step that they could take. So you are nearing our ad break. You're listening to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and our guest, Tammy Gooler Loeb. We'll be right back after these messages. Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on talkradio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to the Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and our guest, Tammy Gooler Loeb. And we are now moving into the framework in her thought work in working from the inside out. CEO. What are these? What does it stand for? How did you come up with it?
I will say that this is not in my book. This is something I've written into a keynote that I
Ooh,
crafted.
fresh off the books. We get it right here.
Yes. So I've been working on my speaking, and I came up with this: be the CEO of your career. And that's not an original statement. However, I took the CEO and fleshed it out. So the C stands for be curious. The E stands for be engaged, and the O stands for take ownership. So in the time that I've been coaching, which is close to 25 years, the time I've been interviewing 250 people in my podcast, and the book, writing the book, I noticed something very poignant about the people who made the changes that were most satisfying for them. And that was they approached the changes gradually, not overnight, and they did it with curiosity. They were curious. They were ready to learn, and they showed up just wondering and just stayed open. And that served them beautifully. So that's why I say be curious. Just be curious. And I say that to people who are scared, who aren't sure of what they want or aren't sure about where to go. Just be curious. You don't have to commit to anything, but get more information. Most people who are unsure of what they want right now can at least be curious and get more information.
Yeah, absolutely resonates for my own career as well.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yep. Okay.
We know because you were a fabulous guest on my podcast. And then be engaged really is part and parcel to getting that information too, because one way to get some great information is to learn from other people, learn from their experiences. So, in the mainstream, we might call that networking. I call it networking, but I say, look, networking is all about getting information. It's not just about having some polished elevator pitch and trying to show up in some shiny way in front of people. It's much, much more about being curious, being interested, and then engaging with people and staying in touch with people. And that leads us into taking ownership, because we live in a time when employers no longer take care of their employees over the long haul. My parents' generation, and I think a lot of us have these models of people who worked for decades in one role, one job, got a pension, were able to retire and live a life somewhat comparable to the life they had when they were working. And it all kind of went fairly smoothly. We really don't have those things available to us in the same way. And we see what's going on in the world now. So we really need to be owners of our own careers now. And that means that we need to be curious and engaged. We need to be, even if you've landed in a brand new job, don't just sit on your hands and say, okay, I'm safe now. Enjoy yourself by all means, but also stay connected to some of those key relationships, at least, if not more. Stay connected, be available to help other people. It's not just about staying connected for the sake of, it's not about just schmoozing with people. It's really about, in a meaningful way, being connected. And because those relationships make all the difference in the world in terms of what you'll be able to do next, so that should something happen that you don't have any control over, you've got relationships out there you can tap into. Likewise, you'll be available to those people should something happen in their work life. And it's not to come from a place of fear, it's to come from a place of resourcefulness and to always be iterating and thinking about, what do I want? How do I want to grow? Stay curious. I mean, these things all blend together. And if you can stay in that mindset, those things are going to serve you beautifully. But they're habits that we really have to develop, because I don't think it's really the way most of us were taught in terms of how we go about kind of conducting our professional lives in that way. But I think it's vitally important that we do that.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And um, one thing that I think is important for people to sort of understand about this CEO framework is it moves from wandering into action, from dreaming to doing.
Yes.
And there are some people, there's been some research on this. This is fascinating. There are some people that once they start dreaming about what could be and then exploring in that sort of engaged, like curious, learning from others way, there is a part of the brain that makes you feel like you've actually done the thing, and it offers a little bit of satisfaction, just enough to stop. And those people aren't necessarily fully satisfied with their lives because they haven't turned that exploration into action. So watch out. There's a self-saboteur inside your brain that will cause you to feel like you did something just because you explored it. It's not true.
Right, right. Yeah. That's interesting. I went to a little school in Western Massachusetts called Hampshire College. And it's kind of an experimenting kind of school. And one of the motto of the school was, to know is not enough.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
I've
Yes,
taken that with me.
that
So
is great.
while I always say you need information to make decisions, right? You still have to act on them. And I think the other thing that I talk to people about a lot is, we all have choices. You can make choices to get the information and then do nothing with it, but understand that you're making a choice to do nothing, or to stay where you are.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's okay. Yeah. But it's a conscious decision. That is an action, but
Yes,
it's a
it is.
conscious decision and action.
Exactly.
So Tammy, share with us, where can folks find you, and what is one thing you want them to remember and take away from what we've talked about today?
Well, they can find me at my website, which will look a little different in the next couple of months. So I'm excited
Exciting.
about that. But it's tammygoolerloeb.com. And I'm the only Tammy Gooler Loeb in the world. So if you start typing Tammy Gooler Loeb, you're going to
Yes.
find me.
And there you will see also the podcast. And many of you often ask me, like, how do I get to my career? How did I build my career? Look for my episode with Tammy and you will find out.
Yeah.
So it's there. Definitely look for our episode,
Yes.
her show as well. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It was such a great conversation we had. I love your story.
Thank
Really
you.
do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One final quick takeaway.
So the takeaway is, don't do this alone. Make sure you stay connected to people, whether you have your own personal board of directors, whether you want to hire a coach or find resources in the community. There are tons of them out there. If you're looking to make a change or you want to, figure a few things out. But a lot of people think that they have to just pull themselves up by their bootstraps and kind of go at this alone. And I see a lot of people who try to do that because they end up coming to me after they've not gotten the results they wanted. And I would say, it really is not a one-person job. You really want to get some support and other perspectives and ideas about, what it is that you're trying to do. It's going to propel you forward to get those perspectives and get another set of eyes on it. You're too close to it yourself to do it by yourself.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. So, audience, what is one thing that you can take away? More importantly, what is one small change you can do to implement this week based on what you learned from Tammy? Share it with us on LinkedIn at Mira Brancu or at talkradio.nyc or Tammy Gooler Loeb so we could cheer you on. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, all over the place, but LinkedIn is where I live. I'm pretty sure that's where Tammy lives online too. So that's where we're going to respond. So that's where we'd like you to comment. In addition to being a live show, we're also on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Please go subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, share it with others to help increase our visibility, reach, and impact. Then find Tammy's and do the same for her. Work from the Inside Out is her podcast, as a reminder. The stuff we talk about on the show is part of our research-based strategic leadership pathway model that we teach in our Tower Scope Leadership Academy, a private coaching and learning community for socially conscious leaders in healthcare, academia, tech, and STEM industries looking to make a greater impact. Learn more and apply by checking us out at gotowerscope.com and click on Leadership Academy. Thank you again to talkradio.nyc for hosting. I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, your host of the Hard Skills Show. Thank you for joining us today with our guest, Tammy Gooler Loeb. Have a great rest of your day, wherever you're tuning in from. Thanks, Tammy. Thanks all.
Thank you.